I've worked in this municipal court for 15 years, translating testimonies for witnesses who speak only Tagalog or regional dialects. It's honest work, important work. But that morning, as I stood translating for Rosa de Macolangan, an elderly woman fighting for her small piece of land, Attorney Rodrigo Salazar decided I was beneath him. He interrupted me mid-sentence, his expensive Italian shoes clicking on the courtroom floor. The contempt in his voice cut deeper than any knife. A failed lawyer playing translator. How tragic. He announced to everyone, his assistants laughing on cue. My law degree, the one I earned but couldn't afford to use because my family needed food more than I needed prestige, became his punchline. He called me a bargain basement court employee, accused me of corrupting the proceedings, demanded Judge Amparo replace me with someone worthy of his time. My hands trembled as 20 years of dignity crumbled in minutes. But there was someone else in that courtroom. A simply dressed older gentleman sitting quietly in the back row, watching everything with narrowed eyes. When he finally stood and walked forward, Judge Amparo's face went pale with recognition. What happened next would change everything. Not just for me, but for the arrogant attorney who thought expensive suits made him untouchable. Sometimes, justice wears simple clothes and observes in silence. And sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody notices. This is the story of the day. Dignity defeated arrogance in a small Manila courtroom. Let me take you back to the beginning of that morning. I arrived at the municipal court at 7:30, just as I had for 15 years. The building smelled of floor wax and old paper, familiar and comforting. I arranged my notebook and dictionary on the translator's desk, preparing for the day's cases. Rosa de Macolangan arrived early too. She was 73, wearing a faded floral dress and clutching a plastic envelope of documents. Her hands shook as she showed me photos of the small house she'd lived in for 40 years. The house a developer now claimed belonged to them.
Manong Lito, you'll make sure they understand me, won't you? My Tagalog is all I have. I never learned their English.
I assured her I would. That was my job. My calling really. To give voice to people like Rosa, who deserve to be heard just as clearly as anyone speaking perfect English. The courtroom filled slowly. Judge Amparo took her seat precisely at 9 o'clock. She was fair and patient, someone who respected every person in her courtroom. The plaintiff's attorney presented his opening statement. Then we waited for the defense. At 9:45, the doors burst open. Attorney Rodrigo Salazar swept in like a thunderstorm. His designer suit, probably worth more than my month's salary. Those Italian shoes, I'll never forget those shoes, clicked against the floor with each impatient step. Two assistants scurried behind him, carrying leather briefcases.
Your Honor, my deepest apologies. Traffic from Makati was absolutely brutal.
But his face showed no apology, only irritation. His eyes swept the courtroom with barely concealed contempt, lingering on Rosa with obvious disdain. This was beneath him. A small property dispute in a municipal court. I could read it in every gesture, every heavy sigh. Rosa took the stand, her weathered hands gripping the rail. She began speaking in Tagalog, her voice trembling but determined. I translated carefully, word by word, ensuring her testimony was recorded with the same respect I'd give to any witness. That's when it started. Attorney Salazar leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing at his lips. He let me translate 3 sentences before he interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension.
Your Honor, I must object. How can we trust the accuracy of this translation? Does this translator even understand the legal terminology involved in property disputes?
The air in the courtroom shifted. I felt every eye turn toward me. Judge Amparo spoke before I could respond, her voice calm but firm.
Attorney Salazar, Mr. Reyes has served this court with his credentials are
Impeccable? Your Honor, with all due respect, I've dealt with translators at the Supreme Court. This is a municipal court employee. The standards are hardly comparable.
His assistants snickered behind their hands. I felt heat crawling up my neck. That familiar shame of being judged by circumstances rather than character. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to mention my law degree, my years of study. But Attorney Salazar was already talking again, louder now, emboldened by his own voice.
In fact, Your Honor, I suspect deliberate mistranslation. This bargain basement court employee seems awfully sympathetic to the plaintiff. How convenient that his words paint my client as the villain.
The accusation hit me like a physical blow. In 15 years, I had never compromised my integrity. My translations were precise because that was the only power I had. The power to be honest, to be fair.
Attorney Salazar, that is a serious allegation. I must warn you.
I demand you replace him immediately. Bring in a real professional, someone from a reputable translation service, someone whose loyalty isn't bought by sympathy or sentiment.
He waved his hand dismissively in my direction, as if I were nothing. A fly to be swatted, an inconvenience in his important day.
I have friends in very high places, Your Honor. The Department of Justice, the Office of Court Administration. One call from me and this entire proceeding will be reviewed for competence, or lack thereof.
Judge Amparo's jaw tightened. I could see her struggling between defending me and protecting her court from this man's threatened connections. In that moment, I understood how power works. How men like Salazar wielded it like a weapon. My hands trembled against my notebook. 20 years of dignity, not just 15 years in this court, but 20 years of building myself from poverty, of earning my education, one sacrifice at a time. All of it crumbling under his polished contempt. I stood silently, frozen, while he continued his assault. What could I say? That I mattered? That my work meant something? Who would believe the bargain basement employee over the man in the expensive suit? But someone was listening. Someone in the back row, dressed simply in a plain barong and dark slacks, leaned forward. His weathered face hardened. His eyes narrowed with something I would later recognize as righteous anger. The older gentleman watched Attorney Salazar with the kind of attention that precedes judgment. The older gentleman stood slowly, deliberately. The wooden bench creaked beneath him as he rose to his full height. There was something in the way he moved, unhurried, certain that made people notice. Conversations stopped mid-whisper. Even Attorney Salazar paused his tirade. The man walked toward the bar with measured steps. His simple barong Tagalog was pressed but plain, the kind you could buy at any department store. No expensive watch, no designer shoes. Yet every person in that courtroom turned to watch him approach. Judge Amparo's face transformed. Her eyes widened, and she stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Her hand moved to her chest, and I heard her breath catch.
Your Honor.
Her voice shook, not with fear, but with the shock of recognition. The kind of shock that comes when you realize someone important has been watching everything unfold. Attorney Salazar turned, irritation flashing across his face at the interruption. He opened his mouth to speak, but something in the room's sudden silence stopped him. The man now stood 5 feet away, his weathered face composed, but his eyes carrying the weight of authority. I am Justice Emmanuel Cabrera, of the Supreme Court of the Philippines. The words landed like thunder in the small courtroom. I watched the blood drain from Attorney Salazar's face. His expensive Italian shoes seemed to root themselves to the floor. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. For 3 weeks, I have been conducting unannounced observations of lower courts across Manila, assessing the integrity of our justice system, the professionalism of our officers, the conduct of those who practice law before our benches. He spoke quietly, but his voice filled every corner of the room. No one dared breathe too loudly. I have witnessed everything that transpired here today. Every word, every accusation, every moment of cruelty disguised as legal advocacy. The justice turned his full attention to Salazar. The attorney's face had gone from pale to gray. Sweat glistened on his forehead despite the courtroom's air conditioning. Mr. Reyes has translated with precision and dignity. His work has been flawless. You, Attorney Salazar, have disgraced your oath. You have weaponized your position to humiliate a dedicated public servant. You have brought shame to this court and to the legal profession itself.
Your Honor, I didn't mean... It was never my intention to...
Silence. The justice raised his hand. Attorney Salazar's stammering apologies died in his throat. The great defender, reduced to trembling silence by a single word. I speak fluent Tagalog. Attorney Salazar. I understood every word Rosa Di Macolangan spoke today. Every nuance. Every emotion. Mr. Reyes captured them all with remarkable fidelity. His translations were not just accurate, they were artful. They preserved the witness's voice while meeting the technical demands of legal documentation. The justice's words washed over me, like warm rain after a long drought. My throat tightened. I had spent 15 years wondering if anyone truly noticed my work, if the care I took with each word mattered to anyone beyond the witnesses themselves. I commend your restraint, Mr. Reyes. Your professionalism under attack speaks to a character that many attorneys would do well to emulate. He turned back to Salazar, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. As for you, Attorney Salazar, I will be filing a formal complaint with the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. The charges will include conduct unbecoming an attorney, bullying of court personnel, contempt of court proceedings, and abuse of your position to intimidate and demean. Your behavior today was not advocacy. It was cruelty.
Please, Justice Cabrera, my career. I have a family. This was a misunderstanding.
Your career is a privilege, not a right. You have abused that privilege. The consequences are yours to bear. Attorney Salazar's expensive briefcase slipped from his hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. His assistants stared at their shoes, desperate to distance themselves from the wreckage of his reputation.
Thank you, Justice Cabrera. This court is grateful for your intervention and your service to the system.
Judge Amparo's voice carried relief and vindication. She had wanted to defend me, but had been outmatched by Salazar's threats. Now justice, real justice, had spoken. I felt a gentle touch on my arm. Rosa de Macolangan stood beside me, her weathered face soft with gratitude.
Salamat po, Mr. Reyes. Salamat for giving me my voice today.
Thank you, Mrs. de Macolangan. I was only doing my job. But it had never been just a job. Not really. The courtroom cleared slowly, people filing out in hushed whispers. Attorney Salazar gathered his scattered papers with shaking hands and left without meeting anyone's eyes. The sound of his expensive shoes on the floor seemed different now, hollow. I began organizing my notes, trying to process what had just happened. My hands still trembled, but now with relief rather than shame. Mr. Reyes, might I have a word with you privately? Justice Cabrera waited near the bench. Judge Amparo nodded at me encouragingly before leaving us alone in the courtroom. Of course, Your Honor. We sat in the front row, the space feeling enormous, now that everyone else had gone. I took the liberty of reviewing your file, Mr. Reyes. I hope you'll forgive the intrusion, but your name was familiar to me. My file? I couldn't imagine what would interest a Supreme Court justice about my modest career. You passed the bar examination. Your second attempt, 15 years ago. You scored quite well, actually. But you never practiced law. The memory rushed back. The joy of seeing my name on the list, followed immediately by the weight of reality. My mother's medical bills, my younger siblings' tuition, the impossible cost of setting up a practice. I couldn't afford it, Your Honor. My family needed support, and this position offered steady income. It was enough. You have the heart of an advocate, Mr. Reyes. That much is clear. You've spent 15 years ensuring that every voice in your courtroom is heard with dignity and precision. That is advocacy of the highest order. Tears burned behind my eyes. I fought to keep them from falling. I would like to offer you a position at the Supreme Court. Our translation and research division needs someone with your skills, both linguistic and legal. The work would allow you to use your law degree while continuing the translation work you do so well. There would be opportunities for advancement. The words didn't seem real. The Supreme Court. Using my legal knowledge. After 15 years of wondering what might have been. Your Honor, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Mr. Reyes. Your country needs people like you. People who understand that justice is not about expensive suits and political connections. It's about service. It's about dignity. He extended his hand. I took it, feeling the firm grip of recognition and respect. Dignity and service matter more than expensive suits, Mr. Reyes. Never forget that. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. The tears fell then, and I didn't try to stop them. 3 months later, I walked through the halls of the Supreme Court building in Padre Faura. The marble floors gleamed under fluorescent lights. My desk in the Translation and Research Division overlooked Taft Avenue, and I spent my days doing work that finally used both my language skills and my legal training. I thought often of my 15 years in the municipal court, not with regret, but with pride. I had given voice to the voiceless. I had stood in the gap between language and justice. That work had meaning. Attorney Rodrigo Salazar faced a 6-month suspension and mandatory ethics training. I heard through colleagues that he now practiced in a smaller firm, taking cases he once would have considered beneath him. Perhaps he learned something. Perhaps not. That was his journey to walk. A letter arrived on my desk one afternoon, forwarded from my old court. The handwriting was shaky but careful. Rosa de Macolangan. She had won her property case. Her family's land was secure. She thanked me for treating her testimony with respect, for making sure every word mattered. I kept that letter in my desk drawer. As I walked through the Supreme Court halls each day, carrying files and research briefs, I noticed something had changed. Not my job title, not my salary, though that had improved. What changed was how I carried myself. I had been seen, truly seen, not as a bargain basement employee or a failed lawyer, but as someone whose work had value, whose character mattered, whose dignity could not be stripped away by another man's cruelty. Justice Cabrera passed me in the hallway one morning and nodded. A simple acknowledgement. It meant everything. I learned something important in that courtroom 3 months ago. Something that stays with me now. Respect is not given by titles, or expensive Italian shoes, or political connections. Respect is earned through character, through integrity, through the daily choice to do your work with dignity, even when no one seems to notice. Someone is always noticing. Justice, when it matters most, has a way of seeing clearly, and that is enough. The characters, incidents, and dialogue in this video are dramatized for narrative and entertainment effect. While some events may be inspired by real-life themes, this story is a work of fiction.